Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to him. He's also requested that we don't have any questions during this presentation. We are going to post his information in the chat, his email and his phone number. So if you guys have any questions as a follow-up for him, please feel free to contact him that way. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Jessica. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Again, as Jessica said, I'm going to hold questions. We did this about 6 months ago, and my presentation goes for about an hour. So I'm going to try to keep us on time. If you have any questions, you certainly can email me or call me at the fire station. I am currently the firefighter EMT, and I also do community risk reduction for Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District. That allows me to work with a lot of other agencies within Central Oregon. And I have some, for you, those of you that are on the west side of the mountains, I was with Polk County Fire as well. And I had a place in Portland for a while, in Wilsonville and Hillsborough. So I know exactly what you guys are looking at. So we're going to try to wrap this up so everybody gets something out of it. So today we're going to cover defensible space best practices. And we have some objectives here. We're going to give you a little historical context of fire in Central Oregon. One thing about Central Oregon is that we have a little bit of higher fire danger than those folks on the west side, but they're not immune to fire, as you've seen in the past. The coast gets hit with fire because everything grows over there, and when stuff dries out and we have red flag warning days, the fire danger over there can be more intense than it is over here, since a lot of those fuels that grow up and dry out are flashy fuels, but they're also ladder fuels, and we'll talk about that. So here we go. So historical context, fire in Central Oregon. We're talking about the WUI and past disasters, kind of leading up to where we're at right now. And we're going to talk about structural ignition and how we got here, defensible space in the home ignition zone. And a lot of people, if you hear HIZ, that's home ignition zone. Some people refer to defensible space as the HIZ and vice versa. And we're going to go quickly over how we conduct an assessment, and the assessments you can have done by the State Fire Marshal's Office, your local fire district or a city fire district. We all are trained on how to do these, and really it's an educational piece that we're bringing to everybody. Our job as firefighters are to give homeowners the tools to be able to mitigate dangers and in association with wildfire. We also do in-home stuff as well. So those are available for most departments. So keep that in mind. So we're going to get right into kind of what's happening over on the east side of the mountains, just because it applies on the west side, but just different trees. So we go from the subalpine all the way down to juniper, where we live in Central Oregon. The underlying geology and water regimes have shaped the forests of Central Oregon, so too has fire. So lower elevation to high, we have these different forest types and different climates, and they're all kind of mixed. And then they have, if you look at the bottom there, if you can see my pointer there, we kind of live right around in this area. And of course, if you're on the west side of the mountains, you kind of are just the opposite. And you run down into like fir, but you have much more ladder fuels and denser trees because the branches typically grow all the way from the ground up. So Bend, you see, is we have ponderosa pine, and this whole area right here is great for us because the ponderosa pine have adapted to wildland fire. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. When we get out in this juniper woodland here, this is pretty devastating for all of us because juniper typically grew as a shrub, and then we'd have forest fires. Forest fires would come down through the ponderosa pine. The pine trees would get heat on their trunks. That would tell them to grow up. The needles that they drop, 30% of their needles, that's to protect their feet at the trunk and keep weed suppression down, as well as keep moisture in the ground for a little bit longer as we ramp up into summer. And then the fire would just kind of go along under the trees, and hopefully it didn't have a ladder fuel because it burned all the smaller ponderosa pine. And that would give the spacing that we're not used to seeing and what we're trying to achieve through fuels mitigation now. And that's all done BLM, US Forest Service, ODF, all those agencies are doing fuels mitigation to try to replicate what we've prevented for the last 100 years. We've done a great job of preventing wildland fire, and it's coming to bite us a little bit now that our temperatures are rising. So we're going to get into tree spacing and roles of fire and dry forest. And so that's pretty simple to see. If you have traveled to Bend from through Sisters, you can see some of the ecology in the forest. Up by Settle Lake, you see a lot of this. And that as you come down, you start seeing a lot of this. So we're trying to mimic our fuels reduction, just how fire would come through and burn, excuse me, got the wrong cursor. So this area right here is what you see kind of by Settle Lake. All these trees are allowed to grow up, and you see dead trees are competing for nutrients and water. Really what we're looking for after forest fires burn through is the vegetation doesn't allow fire to get up into the tree branches. The trees are healthier, and you've got legacy trees. So this is what we're trying to replicate when we do prescribed burns. And that starts with thinning of forests. It starts with mastication, burn piles, and then retreatment of the light flashy fuels, the manzanita, even on the other side of the mountain, rhododendron, or they can burn when they get dry. And all the cheatgrass or whatever is growing on the floor. So if we have a fire in the forest, the fire is only on the ground, and then it just kind of goes through the forest. That's pretty important because in our area, they're doing fuels mitigation around us to create a moat around us because we live in the forest. And basically that protects our towns. Now, what I've seen since I've taken on this role is people want to blame forest fires or wildland fires on what's going on in the forest, when typically 85% of wildland fires are caused by humans, and then the rest are lightning strikes. And if we have forest that looks like this, it's going to burn out. There's not much fuel. Or if it burns towards our town, maybe we're the ones that need to do a little bit better on a home-to-home area, because our ignitions end up being, if our house catches on fire because of an ember shower, we'll talk about that. But then that becomes a wildland urban interface fire, and you get home-to-home ignition, which is really hard for us to fight because of everything our homes are made of. Lots of plastics and oils and stuff, which make them burn hotter. There's a lot of fuel in them. So we're trying to avoid that by talking about defensible space. Little bit of weather ecology here. Everybody knows the temperatures are getting a little bit warmer. They've increased like 1.9 degrees in Fahrenheit since 1970. Although we're having a great winter right now, I did see in our weather next week, we're getting 2 feet of snow in our mountains this weekend, but then it's up to 65 to 70 in Sisters next week. So we got some crazy weather here. I don't know yet if our snowpack is going to change what our fire season is going to look like. I haven't talked to the guys who are doing the forecasting yet, because we had pretty good snow last year, and then we had one really dry and hot week that dried everything out quickly. And then we obviously we had a lot of fire in our state, record number of acres burned. But luckily it was mostly BLM land, and it didn't involve, I think it was like 41 structures, when in 2020 there was like 8,000 homes that did not survive wildland fire. So with a combination of temperatures rising and snow melting sooner, conditions are prime for wildfires to spread and increase.
Steven, if you can hear me, can you unmute?
How long have I been talking on mute?
Just 30 seconds. Sorry about that.
Wow, that was lucky. Okay. So this is a picture of just east of Bend, Keystone Ranch, actually east of Prineville. This is what it looked like in 1890. And then, and typically these junipers, these are all juniper trees or bushes here. And you can see the small ones just growing. Wildland fire would come through and knock all these down. And then you just had brown hills and cheatgrass. Well, with our fire prevention efforts and through the last 100 years, 1989, these are all super tall, like trees that are, 50 feet tall. And each of these juniper trees, these ones down here, that one right there, probably drinks about 20 to 30 gallons of water a day. Some of the bigger ones drink like 45 gallons of water a day. So they suck up a lot of nutrients and a lot of water from the ground that takes out of our aquifer. We didn't used to have these problems with, our aquifer being lower for anybody who was on a well. But junipers are part of that reason. And, snow melt, snowpack, snow melt also is a contributing factor. But all these junipers, and we kind of live in that transition zone. These are the trees that you will never talk to anybody in the fire service that says, should I take that juniper tree down? And we're like, yes, and please don't plant any of those near your house because they'll kill everything that you plant around it. So this next slide's kind of going over what's happening in Central Oregon. And this was, I think, 2023. This is a map of human-caused fire starts around Sisters and lightning strikes. So this is last year, 2022. This last year, Sisters dodged a bullet. As a lot of you know, that we had a lot of lightning strikes in August, and they all went around kind of the backside of Bend, kind of hit Lapine, and then it kind of went east. And then we had all those conflagrations on in the eastern side of the state with BLM land and ranchers' lands and things like that. So you can just, we talked about the human caused starts. I got ahead of my slide there, but 85% of them. And really in July, we had almost 100% of our fire starts were from humans. And it's just really just carelessness. I mean, people that came to camp in the forest, or in a campground, they don't put out their fire like it says when you walk, hey, put your fire out, pour water on it. Things like that were happening. So we just need to get better at that. So we can, so Mother Nature will do its thing, and we just have to worry about that. But if we can all get a little bit smarter on not being careless or not dragging chains while you're driving up or driving over here to camp or driving anywhere to camp, that's how a lot of these fires start kind of right in the corridor. You see a lot of these happen right off the freeway. Those are typically car fires or truck fires. Even up on the mountain, we have quite a few truck fires, some people pulling trailers up the mountain pass, and the trucks get overheated and they start on fire. And then we've got, from here, we got 40 minutes or 35 minutes to get up over here to put out a truck and tractor trailer fire. And that can extend into the surrounding areas of the vegetation. And so we kind of got to be ready for both kind of fires, wildland fire as well as, a vehicle fire. So over the past 10 years, we've had a lot of those fires start in the ODF subunit alone, and that's burned about 70,000 or 7,000 acres. So historically, wildfires burned at low intensity, and whenever conditions supported combustion and fire spread, typically the conditions weren't extreme, so the fire effects were patchy and varied on the landscape. Suppression and inclusion reduced the occurrence of fire, mostly to eliminate fires during all but extreme conditions. Now we're experiencing a wicked problem. The wildfire exclusion policy has increased the potential for extensive wildfires during extreme conditions. This was 1996. I think Cloverdale has that fire engine at their station now. They bought it from Bend. That was pretty scary. The skeleton fire affected a lot of people on the west side of Bend. I wasn't around for that. I think I moved to Bend in 2004. But obviously there's a lot of history in there. Above you can see pictures, and these are burns that happen. So you can see how trees get scarred from the various burns. And, this is, when you slice open a legacy tree, or they get a chance to look at a downed one, you can see like the typical years in between. wildland fire, caused by lightning strikes happen like every, 10 years or so with a couple gaps, this was 20 years maybe. Um, so the large fires we see today are typically impacting landscapes and communities that are approximately 2% of total fire starts. So we can be clear that our suppression resources have been really good at suppressing fires. The 2% that we see make the news and are driven by the fuel and vegetation conditions and extreme weather events. So basically, if we're experiencing extreme weather events, we have heavy fuel loading, and suppression is difficult because of lack of resources. And then you add homes into the mix, a wildland fire, the embers blowing from a wildland fire into a neighborhood and they start a house on fire, then our resources are stretched even thinner. We don't have enough people to get here if something on a red flag day, 20-mile-an-hour winds, which we normally get coming off the mountain. That happens, we're calling in extra resources, and that's difficult for them to get here. So we can ask for Lapine and Sun River Fire to come up to help us, but they're like an hour away. So we do have a good response in our neck of the woods. Bend certainly is a big help, and we're certainly a big help to Bend. We all work with each other to try to make sure we can get on top of these things. But the state's been pretty wise recently, and they're starting to plan for wildland fire events by pre-positioning task forces from the west side of the mountains. Like my former district, Polk County, came over last year, and as soon as they were driving in through Sisters, we got a call for a fire in Bend. It was the Highway 97 fire, and basically they were right behind me as I came out of Sisters to go down to that fire. So we get a lot of help from our neighbors, and we extend that help to them as well. So the WUI, you'll hear that a lot, wildland urban interface. That's kind of how we live, and when we're living basically in the forest, we're building in the forest, and basically the Senate Bill 762 helped guide the design of a wildfire hazard map. Pretty controversial. We won't get into that too much right now because it's been suppressed. I'm hoping we don't see it again because it's still a 30,000-foot view of our geographical and topographical lands and fuels that we have here. It doesn't really, to make an accurate map, you need to do a walk through every tax lot, which would cost a lot of money. But it wasn't meant to make insurances leave. So I'll just leave it at that. We are having issues here in Sisters, and I didn't believe that my job wasn't going to entail learning about the intricacies of insurance and talking with agents at State Farm for hours on end, trying to figure this all out to make sure that we're not losing homeowners insurance in our town, and myself included. My house is in the high risk. I knew it's always been like that, so I did create Defensible Space, because if there's a fire in Sisters, I have to leave my house in Cloverdale and come help put out fire here. My house is going to have to stand alone. When we do our assessments, I tell people, look, you got to prepare your home as if the fire department's not going to make it there, because there is a chance that we might not be able to make it, depending on how big of an incident it is. So we'll talk a little bit about that in evacuations, and doing a 360 around your house is exactly what we would do to your house if we came into your neighborhood to protect your home from wildland fire. So the definition: geographical area where structures and other human development meets or intermingles with wildland and vegetation fuels. Any location where wildland can spread from vegetation to structures. Okay. I think we all understand that. I think we're all getting pretty privy to what's going on, and everybody's learned a lot by watching the news or listening to what's happening in your town. I think this map is great to show kind of what happened in Palisades. Same thing in Talent, Oregon, or Tangent, Oregon, wherever that fire was, down by Medford. So you get wildland fire, and if you get like a lightning strike out here and you get a wind event, we don't have wildland fire without wind, basically. You can have embers that fly over and they can land over it here like this. And the wind catches the stuff around these homes here and catches your house on fire. And then you got home to home fire. And then I'll show you a picture that shows kind of how this kind of wildland fire comes into a wildland urban interface fire and then moves out of the town and what's left. You think that all the trees are going to catch on fire, and then you see where all the fuel is at. It's all these homes that burn down to the ground, and look at the trees. They're doing fine. They got scorched, but it's the home-to-home ignition that happened in Lahaina. So here's just a couple fires. Talent, Oregon, that was the last one, 2,600 homes lost. Marshall Fire, that was interesting because that fire happened during the wintertime. It was actually snowing when my son's friend was down there fighting the fire. He said they froze at nighttime, but they were still fighting fire while it was snowing on them. And that happened in Bend a couple years ago. We had a fire out on the west side, and we fought it from like 4 to like 11 o'clock. And 11 o'clock, it started to snow on us while we were still putting out fire. So the Lahaina fire, again, a structure to structure fire, and they've done a pretty good job of reporting. And a lot of people have done a lot of studies on that, showing that, the banyan tree is still there and alive, even though it got scorched, but those houses were pretty close to each other. Defensible Space may have saved that town, but if you are having 80 to 100-mile-an-hour winds, all bets are off. That's a super fire condition. That's something that happened in Palisades. They expect those winds to come down, the Santa Ana winds, and you've got embers that are blowing, just not even touching the ground at 80 miles an hour. Hard to stop for when, even if you're prepared for it. And that's kind of what happened in Paradise. They knew that they were probably going to get fire, so they deployed a bunch of structure fire engines and people up there, and jumped over from the forest and on the other side of town and lit everything off. And all those homes were kind of tied together with a bunch of wood fences. So we'll talk about that. So here we are. We're looking at a home that may or may not been lucky. It looks like, and I don't know where this home is at, but if we look at this in terms of wildland fire, it was stopped here, probably by a fire department. No embers started anything on this property. I mean, these types of trees burn. Actually, that might be like a fire resistant plant. But again, this was taken a couple years ago, and these are not advisable in the 0 to 5 foot defensible space now. Again, our what we're learning is that, and the science behind it is changing what our messaging is. And we'll talk about how we're going from fire resistant plants. We're kind of okay in the 0 to 5 foot defensible space. Now they're not. We don't, the studies have shown that, with a good amount of fire, those plants could be fuel to start your siding on fire or your eaves on fire. And so everything's changing, and we're going to have to kind of adopt a new way of landscaping our homes and how we maintain it because of all the studies that are coming out. So fire conditions, we're going to go pretty quickly because we have a wildland fire start. I just spoke about this. You might have simultaneous ignitions from the ember showers coming from the wildland fire, and it could be like snow showers, like light snow showers coming in, or it can be full-on blizzard conditions depending on how big the wind is. And once we have one ignition of a home and a second ignition, at least in Sisters with our staffing and even callbacks, and also having Black Butte and Cloverdale come up here to help fight fire, we don't have enough resources if we have home-to-home ignition, and that's what all these other fires have had devastating as far as home ignitions and not being able to stop the fire until there's nothing left to burn. I mean, Palisades burned all the way to the water before there was no more burning. Obviously, there's no more fuel, so we can overwhelm our resources. And many homes ignite and burn without us even being able to get there. Again, get ahead of myself because I'm so passionate about this. And then, you know, it leads to having a WUI disaster, and we call that an urban interface fire. It's not a wildland fire. Once it jumps from the wildland to a home ignition and you get home to home ignition, it's no longer a wildland fire. It's an urban interface fire. So science, why is science important? Probably a lot of you guys know this, but you need three things to start a fire. You need fuel, you need heat,
Good, thank you.
oxygen. Secondly, you're looking at this fuel arrangement, topography, and weather. That's another component of that. But you know, we're talking about wildland fire, so we know that's typically happening in the summertime when we get hot weather and we get wind. So the fire science is important. It's the foundation of why we have the recommendations that will be discussed in some of these other slides. We understand the effects of how wildland fire burns and and if we understand it, we know what actions to take as homeowners. So here we go. Fuel. Okay, you got a matchstick forest home, and you got a well-built brick home with looks like some defensible space. I think we probably need to update these pictures, but fuel is the one component that we can mitigate at our house. And so we're going to talk about some of those ways to mitigate that fuel and how we prevent our home from catching on fire from any ember. Could be from your neighbor's burn that got away from them. It could be from a house fire. We had a house fire in Tollgate last year in June, and we had a little bit of wind, but if we would have that same house fire in July or August, Tollgate, it could have been devastating for that subdivision. So here we're talking about fuel arrangements. The vertical safety gaps are important also. Heat rises and preheats fuel. So you can see, like, if the wind was blowing like this, these flames are showing, all the fire down here preheats all this stuff, and which allows it to ignite. And that's kind of like if you stuck a matchstick up to a log house, is that log going to catch on fire from a matchstick? Well, if you preheat it and it gets up to a temperature that's like ignition point, and you introduce a flame to it, it certainly it'll start smoldering, and eventually it'll catch on fire. So another point this photo is making here is that if these bushes right here catch on fire, their flame length is 3 times the size. So they flame lengths up here. And if the wind's blowing, it's blowing it this way. And so you're catching this on fire, and then these catch the trees on fire. And then when it gets up in the crown, we've got major problems because it can go crown to crown. So tree spacing in, if you have 100 feet defensible space, some homes have 0 lot lines and working with a whole different scenario there. But tree spacing is important. We'll go over that in some later slides. Well, 2 ways that homes ignite during wildland fire are flames and embers. So flames from fuels close enough. I just spoke about that. And then embers are little pieces of bark dust or whatever is coming off the trees. Obviously, this is a scary situation to be in. We've been in that before. And not only is it just exactly like this, but there's also smoke blowing through. So sometimes you can only see the embers, but you can't see the road or anything. You can't see anything in front of you. These are small pieces of debris that burn with wind or convection. And what do you think? This is the kind of open-end question for everybody. What do you think ignites homes during a wildland fire? Is it flames or embers? Well, the embers come long before the flames come. So the embers are going to come in like the snow. And then if everything keeps burning towards you and you don't reduce the amount of fuel coming to your home, then you're going to have a wall of flame coming to your home. So again, our defensible space best practices, we're trying to lessen the amount of fuels as a fire is coming towards you. And that initially your 0 to 5 foot defensible space would prevent these embers from catching your home on fire. And then you're just, hopefully you're not there, but we're waiting for the fire wall to come towards us. And then it just drops down because there's nothing else to burn. Like, you've done a good job of maintaining your property around you and mitigating fuels, and you've done the correct pruning of your trees, and you don't have cheatgrass that's 2 feet tall. So all those things are going to help lessen the amount of heat and embers coming against your house, along with that 0 to 5 foot defensible space. Let's see if this plays here, and maybe Jessica, you can tell me if you can everybody can hear this.
Is there supposed to be sound now?
Let's see. This one should have sound, but okay, well, like last year, I will describe what this is. Or they will.
Actually, Stephen, can I just cut you off for 1 second?
Sure, sure.
We've had quite a few people join late, and I apologize for our Zoom meeting not being able to keep up with capacity. But if everyone could hold their questions until after the session, you can email Stephen. I've put his email in our group chat, or customer service at Aperion. I've also put that email there. As we're not going to have time for any questions and answers during this. He is going to take up the full hour. So I'll give you back the floor here.
Okay, and then along with what Jessica just said, feel free to write down your questions. This is also going to be for you guys that got on late. There's going to be a YouTube link for Aperion that is going to be in the notes. You guys can rewatch that video and get what you missed in the beginning, and then you can send me an email or call me at the fire station with your questions. Okay, so this is IBHS, Institute of Business and Home Safety. They're the company that's funded. They're a nonprofit funded by insurance companies, and they're paid to do these studies. So insurance companies don't lose a bunch of structures for wildland fire. They also do hurricane studies for the correct building material and strapping. They do stuff about flooding. And so basically they're going to create 2 different homes here, one with defensible space and one that doesn't have defensible space. And they use this wall of fans. Now they've gotten way more high tech than this wall is showing. They have a gigantic wall that blows way more embers now. They blow them at 10 to 20 miles an hour, like it says, and then you're just gonna see what happens here with what's planted. So I'll point out a couple things. This is vinyl siding. And that just basically melts. These are vinyl gutters. These pitches and roofs, whenever you have like pine needles or fir needles blowing on your roof, they're going to blow exactly in those crevices and exactly where those winds are going to blow the embers. It's going to have the same eddies of the wind patterns. And so there was stuff in the gutter here that caught on fire. And then of course that fuel melts the gutter, and you can see you've got fuel in the gutter there, and it drops down the ground. And then they've got bark dust in the 0 to 5 foot defensible space, and that's defined as from the foundation out, or if you have a deck, from the deck out. So then there's 2 things we need to look at about decks and what can blow underneath them, because embers can blow underneath decks just like pine needles can, what debris is under them, and how to mitigate that. And that's a home hardening thing, which we'll talk about with some metal mesh. Also, the gaps in your deck can also create more fuel if needles and things can get between the gaps, and then they just end up drying out underneath your deck. So this house is on a gigantic Lazy Susan. And so this thing's rotating around. Obviously the bark dust, it can catch on fire because the embers are hitting the side of the house and dropping down, and they pile up along here, and then they start the bark dust on fire. Behind, if you have like hardy plank siding, you have some paper there, and if that bark dust is right up against your foundation, the flames can actually wick behind the siding. Again, this is vinyl siding, vinyl windows, and you see with these plants here in this heat, it broke that window open, and so now you got embers that are blowing inside the house. Again, 0 to 5 foot defensible space, no plants, nothing that can catch on fire, just dirt or rocks or metal yard art. I did mention about 1/8 inch screening around your ground level decks if you can't get in there and clean them out. we see mostly in homes that have gable vents is typically going to be 1/8 inch, but that's something when we go around people's homes, we're trying to look for. And we can't always see from the ground level if they have 1/8 inch metal mesh screening. You also have the same metal mesh screening around your foundation if you have a crawl space, and that comes as 1/4 inch, and that needs to be changed to 1/8 inch. So we tell people about that. Again, you can have these assessments done to help better prepare your home for those wildland fire ember showers. Okay, so structural ignition. We've talked about vegetation impact on structures, but if we're going to prevent a home ignition, we need to address the structural ignitability. So again, we start from the roof down, and this is a Class A rated roof, and that's what we want to see. So this is composite or 3-tab or asphalt shingles. Those are type A rated roofs. Those are great. That's what we want to see. Not too many people have shingle roofs anymore. And they're horrible to have, for one. Another type A rated roof is a tile roof or a metal roof. So those are what we want to see as far as some of the building codes and that are coming out. That's what those are going to imply, the type A rated roof. This is not a real log home from what I can, well, maybe it is. Yeah, it is a real log home. As long as this siding is maintained, like the little cracks and crevices don't allow embers to stick in there, these log homes are pretty rock solid as far as embers hitting against them and dropping down. And then if we have vents around here, we're going to look for vent screening. And then we start 0 to 5 feet out off your porch here and do our assessment for defensible space from 0 to 100 feet if you have it. This next photo, I'm going to hypothesize that I think that might be stucco building, which is why you don't see a lot of it burn. So that's cement. Cement fiber also, or hardy plank, will not catch on fire unless your home burns from within. Now there's water here. So this actually, they fought this structure fire. Otherwise this all would have collapsed and you wouldn't see wood here. But based on the age of this house, I'm imagining it had a tile roof with a stucco, and how I think that this roof caught on fire, or this attic space caught on fire and burned down from the top. You can see how it burned down from the top. And then here it might have burned up. You can see these. I did a fire investigation class yesterday, so I know all these burn patterns, but I think basically this might have been due to the tile roof, and I'll show you a picture of what a tile roof, actually it's the next slide here, which may have caught this home on fire. So these are like bird blocks. I had a house in Arizona, exact same roof. Birds and bees like to make nests in there, and if wind can blow embers in there and they can catch the bird nest on fire, right underneath here is your sheeting for your roof. So if you have enough fuel in there, that can certainly catch your roof on fire. Another way is if you saw that ember shower video where the embers were going through the gable there, that's another way of starting an attic fire. And people heard of that. Salem Fire Department saw smoke and smoke coming out of a roof. I think it might have been a commercial building, or it could have been a very large home in the Palisades fire, and they had their structure engine. They pulled up to it and they got water up into the attic, and they put the fire out. And that was basically an ember shower that started that home on fire, or commercial building on fire. So kudos to them for driving around and seeing that. Typically homes burn from the embers that are landing near the foundation. Okay, so complex roofing means maintenance. I think this looks like my family's cabin on the coast, the exact same thing. If you're on the west side and you get a lot of leaf debris in here, embers will fall against this roof and typically blow down. But if there's a bunch of fuel in here, they certainly can land in that fuel and get stuck and start on fire. Another place embers, bird nests and the like to come in here and and that's where you can have a fire start. You can even have a bunch of embers land on top of these. Kind of the code is talking about boxing in this stuff, and really that detracts from a lot of the craftsman look that a lot of us love. But know that these are maintenance areas. And so this needs to be looked at least twice a year, probably in May or June. And if you have a winter or a windstorm during the summer, if you have debris collecting up here, and then certainly before wintertime as well, because wintertime, if you have snow like we do, having debris up here can stop your snow and ice and create ice dams. So that's kind of a good practice, but at least twice a year, you need to be checking your roof and cleaning it. Here's some boxed in basically overhangs and some open overhangs. Again, there's a probability of fire or embers going and collecting in here. It's low, but it still is a probability. Here it has nowhere to go. Again, but if you have any open places in this, like that might be an open spot, that's a maintenance thing that needs to be addressed. So embers don't go in there, bees don't go in there, build a nest and give you a bunch of fuel for embers to burn. So we're going to talk a little bit about Dr. Cohen's work and on how eaves can provide shading and cooling when the home is subject to radiant heating, which is super helpful. And he did a big study, and we'll show some pictures of that. It was done up in Canada. I can't let this guy from the Forest Service burn a bunch of their land to do studies on structures and how close a big mega fire in the forest can be. And if you had some preventative space and some hardening, what would happen to the structures? And so we'll look into that study real quick. But before we get into that, we're going to show a little bit about the screening I talked about. This is what we see in foundation vents. This is what we want. This can be cut and placed over the top of that. And when you cut it, these little jagged things on the ends here won't allow it to let go. It's pretty easy to do. That can be bought at Home Depot or Amazon. You can actually buy it at Home Depot and they'll send it to your house. You can buy it at any hardware store. It comes in rolls in all different sizes and shapes. So this is 1/8 inch screening up here. This may be 1/8 inch screening. This is all new stuff. This is 1/8 inch screening. I have this at my house. If this stuff, birds love to get in there and make nests, they can peck their way through that metal. So you want to make sure that those are covered up, and Home Depot also sells little hole covers for that. You pop it in place and it's a louver, plus it has screening behind it, much like this would be a louver with screening behind it. Again, from the ground level, this is way up. We see some older homes and sisters that we're doing assessments on. We may not be able to see the 1/8 inch screening there. So we let the homeowners know, hey, we're not going to climb up in your attic, but you need to peek up there and make sure that that has the correct screening. This is some newer type screening on a higher end home, obviously with the tongue and groove soffit here. It's high end home. This right here is a new technology. This is probably a couple $100, but it has cells in there. And so if an ember goes through there, the cells melt together and the whole thing shuts off. Now that can prevent your home from catching on fire, which is great. But pretty expensive to retrofit. That would be new construction. It would be a big cost. Again, you can get away with this type of screening or just metal mesh, which you can buy from Home Depot. Okay, so we've kind of covered the roofs, we covered the soffits. Now we're getting down to the 0 to 5 foot defensible space. So even with non-combustible siding, be aware that any gaps may lead to the framing materials or insulation. So if you had a crack in here or one of these boards is split, that needs to be addressed because it can get behind. Embers are going to be hitting this with light snow shower force or blizzard force winds. All the embers hit here, they drop on top of this, which is great because that's metal sheathing right there. And then this is stone material. And then it drops down in here. What do we have down here? We have leaves piling up, and that certainly can catch on fire. Is it going to catch this on fire? No, but can it have enough heat or radiant heat? Or if there's other things in this yard that could catch on fire, like if this was bark dust, certainly you're going to have more fuel and more fire potential. Again, we're talking about 0 to 5 foot now being 0 to 5 feet out here being nothing but dirt or decorative rock. And I did that at my house. It was the same price to buy 10 yards of decorative rock as it was last year, as it was to buy 10 yards of bark mulch in 2019, which I put down and had to take back up. So radiant heat can also crack windows or melt basically they can melt this is a vinyl thing here. You can melt this, but really if you get any kind of flame impingement from like a bush outside, this will break. It's a dual pane window. It can break at like 270 degrees. And when that breaks open, it's going to allow for embers to go inside your structure. If you had tempered glass windows, it's gonna fragment. It's kind of like your windshield in your car where, you know, you don't get pieces. It's all kind of webbed together. Better glass to have, but it's better not to have that amount of flame against your home in the first place. So again, defensible space, 0 to 5 foot, most important thing you guys can do for your homes right now. Okay, so this is much like paradise on the left. Fencing. This is what caused a lot of home-to-home ignitions in Paradise because typically fencing companies will build that right up next to your home. Over here on the right is what we'd like to see in every home. This is probably an expensive gate. So this is something you either need to plan for. In the meantime, if you're evacuated from your home and you have a gate that's made like this, you're going to want to, if you're evacuated, you're going to walk around your house and I can email you a checklist of what you need to do of making sure your house is ready to go and stand alone without you being there. And so you would just prop open that gate and secure it with a rock or something. So that wood gate would burn all the way up to here and then it'd stop. Okay, decks and patios. Well-maintained decks are a good thing. It's better to have pavers like you see at the bottom photo there. A lot of people have these wood decks here. If it's maintained and cleaned, not really going to be too much of an issue. What would we like to see? We'd like to see pavers because this is combustible. Remember that 0 to 5 foot defensible space starts at your deck and goes out. So this is considered part of the home. Again, it has to be maintained. If you have rotten wood or big gaps and there's stuff getting in between it, there's a potential for wind can blow embers up into there. They might crawl in those little creases there and drop down and start whatever dead fuels underneath your deck. Again, you know, if you have a above ground level deck where you can get in there and store stuff, please don't store anything but metal down there because that's just extra fuel. So while we say this is what we want to see, if we had to come around and do a 360 around your house to protect it, if fire's coming your way, we're going to have a hard time moving this big planter. We might just cut that tree off and throw it out in the yard because you don't want this type of tree near your home, and especially near this fabric up here. And you don't want fabric chairs. These are things on your 360 you want to put inside your house. The metal can stay out there. If it's wicker, move it way farther out. We're not so nice when we're doing 360s on furniture and stuff. We're hucking stuff out there because we only want to give 10 minutes per house to do a 360 and go on to the next house. If you have a house that has all this and I roll up on it, I'm going to write your house off. There's no way in 10 minutes we can move all this stuff. And so we're going to be able to do 3 more houses with 10-minute 360s rather than one house taking a half hour to move all this stuff out from under your deck. That's why we want you guys to do this before we have fire. So hence all this education that everybody's been giving. This house, this is a fire potential right here. Again, if you send me, or you can just write this down. If you Google search Good Morning America IBHS, you're going to see a video of lattice catching on fire. And this, of course, this lattice is right under some deck stairs. So that's just going to climb up and it's going to go to your second floor deck. all this stuff right here, these are good plants, but still we're asking that any vegetation be 0 to 5 foot out. This is bark dust, no good. That lattice is an ignition point. We don't want to see lattice. If you do have lattice to cover a ground level deck, we want to see that 1/8 inch mesh in place of that lattice. And if you hit it with a black spray paint can, you can hardly see it. I've done that to my front porch and it looks fabulous. Here's something, this is not at my house, but this is exactly what happened when my, I have a livestock guardian dog, a Great Pyrenees, and she was playing with my other dog in the yard and she ran against, our deck is actually covered with hardy plank siding and split it. Super pain for me to replace. Again, if you have that, you can fill it in with something, but don't leave it like that during fire season. There's little fibers in here. And it's actually a point of where if this bark dust caught on fire, that flames could creep up like that, and especially on the backside of it with the paper behind there. We certainly don't want to see this during fire season. Please maintain your gutters. There's going to be probably code in the future that's going to require gutter guards for a lot of us. So just keep that in mind. If you have gutter guards, that's great. I've done a lot of educational pieces with people and ask about their gutter guards and if the pine needles stick in there and stick up like a porcupine like it does in the yard when you have a big windstorm. And happy to report they're pretty good. So that should be something you should think about if you have a ton of fuel like this and you don't want to spend all your time cleaning gutters. You can just pull this down and then it's all on the ground and you can clean it up. Okay, structural ignition. Let's see, this is a study.
So from start to finish, we're going to start with our ember generators, which we use to recreate a realistic ember exposure. Embers are those small burning and smoldering particles that may travel ahead of the fire front. And what we do with our generators is we create the realistic exposure, and in our wind tunnel, we're able to throw them at a building. And then we have a building that has two sides to it, a good side, which uses wildfire resistant construction, and what we're considering a typical building that we would see in a wildfire prone area. Exactly as we expected, that mulch on the ground there caught fire from the embers. The fire from the mulch burned up under this deck, and this whole deck was on fire. And so this fire on this deck caused flames right against the home. And then if we look there at the base of the door, there was actually the flames from this deck that burned through the bottom of the door. And on the inside of the house, we started to see smoke and flames. And so because this deck was a combustible material attached to the building, when the embers led to the ignition of this deck, we got flames inside of the building. Here we are on the wildfire resistant side of the house where we had non-combustible siding, a 5-foot non-combustible zone and a 6-inch gap. We had a metal gutter and multi-pane windows. And we see in comparison to the non-wildfire resistant side, this side had the same ember exposure. If you look here in the mulch, you can actually see some of the embers that had accumulated, but because they had no susceptible fuel to ignite, they just landed there and fizzled out. And here we have ornamental vegetation that again is susceptible to the embers, but because it's more than 5 feet away from the home, it didn't have enough energy to ignite, and it never led to a flame impact on the building. So from start to finish.
Okay, we're gonna start to cruise through this because in the interest of time, I need to cut about half of my slides out in my presentation. So when we do our assessments, we're trying to give you something that you can work with, and we try to share with people, look, if you have bark dust, you can pull it back, redistribute it further out in your yard, or replace it with rock. Things you can do easily, maintenance, covering vents with 1/8 inch screening, cleaning your gutters out or having somebody do it for you. And then you look at the different things, like if you had cedar siding, that would be something you need to plan for. As long as your cedar siding is well maintained, It's fine. It's not the best thing to have in your house, but you know, you work with your budget, you work with what you can do and try to do the low hanging fruit first. We're not trying to create defensible space that looks like this and you have nothing in your yard. So that 0 to 5 foot space, if you have it, decorative rock decorations that are non-combustible would be great. 5 to 30 is where you can start looking at fire resistant plants. So there's the moonscaping that everybody thinks we're talking about. So basically, we're going to look at the 5 to 30 for the fire resistant plants. This is that Cohen study that he did. These buildings are here real quick. They set this fire on in a forest in Canada. I can't believe they let them do it, but these were like 30 yards from that fire. And so with the right building materials and defensible space around it, they didn't catch on fire.
Hey, Stephen, if you need to go over the hour, that's totally fine. We're recording, and so
Okay.
people need
Okay.
to drop off. I'm going to send out that recording link by tomorrow. It just takes a little time for it to download to Zoom and then upload to YouTube. So, yep, just this is
Okay.
good information.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So sorry for those who have to drop off. I understand it's probably taking up your lunch hour. So let's look at this dispensable space here. So if you have this amount of property, that 0 to 5 feet, that's probably not good right there. I don't know why they put that in the picture or that one. So these need to be taken away. This needs to be taken away. Or at the very least, if you have potted plants or you don't have ceramic pots or they're plastic around your house, on your 360, that would be something that you'd want to move out here. Anything that's on your deck here, if you have furniture, you have a wreath on your door, you certainly don't want that on there. There was a guy in Palisades that actually had a defensible space house, metal roof. His defensible space was rock solid. He had stone around his house or cement, and he was on evacuation notice 1. It went to 2, and he was sweeping off his front porch, and he walked into his house, got his wife. They got in the car and drove away. He left his broom against the house, and it caught an ember and burned his house down. So it can take something as little as a bird's nest, a swallow's nest in the corner of your home, to a wreath on your front door. Again, if you have time on your 360, you're running around and take care of that stuff before we get there, and you leave, and your house hopefully is going to withstand the ember shower. We're going to look at a couple pictures on the 5 to 30 feet, some examples, and then this 30 to 100 is basically tree spacing and kind of the types of trees. Again, this stuff out here, you shouldn't have to worry too much about. If you have prune trees like you see here, fire comes from a big wall of flame, it comes here and it might hit some cheatgrass if it's not watered, and then it'll burn slowly, and then it kind of fizzles out. And really, if it got all the way up to here, it's not going to go past your rock or dirt. Here's another example of defensible space, 5 feet. I imagine this is probably 5 feet from here, and then bark dust here. Again, just know that whatever you plant out here can grow big, and in 15 years, it might be something like if you planted cypress bush out here or some kind of juniper type bush, that it's going to get big and it presents fire danger. If you look at that video from Good Morning America, IBHS, you're going to see them light off a juniper ornamental tree. It's about 2 feet tall. They hit it with a torch, and they show the video of that thing. It basically looks like a gas can catching on fire. We talk about stuff on your porch. Even this material here, this is aluminum, but this is fabric. It can be sprayed with some type of fire resistant coating, but usually those coatings have to be reapplied. You'll have to research that if you want to leave your furniture out there. My best guess is that you'd rather just want to put that inside your house before you go on vacation in the summertime. Or if there's a red flag warning, you might want to put it inside your house. If you have a lot of stuff outside, minimize the amount of time it takes you to do the 360. And then we get into that 5 to 30 foot zone, and you're going to want to look at OSU Extension's and they're based out of Redmond, Oregon. They put out a plant guide for fire resistant plants, succulents, things like that. But all plants will burn at some point. So you want to have these in the 5 to 30 foot defensible space. Here you go. Succulents, ground covers, turf, all those things are good. Again, you can get that plant guide. It's in a book form, but you can also get the PDF online. So that's a good resource to kind of look at your plant zone where you live and make sure you're planting the right stuff. There's another photo here of some stuff that you don't want to plant around your house. This looks like a lot of properties that are about 20 years old around Sisters. This it's been cut back, and obviously it's dead on the inside. So if you pry your fingers in there and you pull that back, everything on the inside of this bush is going to look like this. Ember is going to fall in here and light that up. And even these arborvitae trees, arborvitae trees are pretty dangerous to have because they have a lot of flame and heat coming off of them. And obviously they're in a line toward your house. If the wind's blowing toward your house, I mean, the flames could reach up here into your eaves, all this stuff. If you have this, it's a fire danger. If it's way far from your house, that's better. If it's up close to your house or in between your neighbor's house and yours as a screening, think of something different because super dangerous to have that. A lot of people have used this for screening between driveways we've seen in Sisters, so we don't want to see that. Here we go with how devastating these bushes that you see out in front here can be. I think this is about, I think they started taking this video at about 2.5 minutes when the person saw it. And obviously you can see their house is no better. I think we all have seen homes like this, and you just need to know what the fire potential is. As soon as this fire got into these eaves right here, unless a fire truck is pulling up right now and spraying water on this quickly, that's into your roof. And then we have to go in and start pulling ceiling down. Once fires get into a roof, they pretty much they spread pretty quickly, and the house can be a total loss. But another fire doubles in size every minute. So you can see how in a couple minutes of a fire engine being there, how devastating that can be. Okay, here we go. Some fuels contain chemicals, oils, and resins. And what are those? That's anything that's basically conifer. Pine, ponderosa pine, a little less, but all these great trees that we see all over our state, ornamental blue, I can't remember what these called, blue firs or whatever they're called. They catch a lot of pine needles, and they catch a lot of embers, and they're right down to the ground. So if you have embers basically lighting this mulch on fire, it can either start the tree on fire, or the embers falling down here can start that on fire. And these are great to sell homes. They make a yard look beautiful. And again, I always tell people, look, I love your landscaping. I love what they've done. It's 20 years past when they put it in, and absolutely you bought it because it made your house look beautiful, and that's why you bought the house. But now that it's 24 years old and it's gigantic and it's super close to your house, I don't love that tree enough that I would tell you you shouldn't remove it, because if you don't, and we have a wildland fire, the embers are going to start it on fire, and it's going to start your house on fire. And that tree that you didn't want to remove actually was a cause of your home burning down, and also that tree's gone as well. So you end up with nothing. So I always tell people, look, I love that tree. I just don't love it where it's at. 0 to 5 foot, even 5 to 30 when they get big like this, might be a little too close. I have a couple of big old junipers about 30 feet from my deck, and they are absolutely too close because I've seen the same size of tree burn in videos, and I don't want that anywhere near my house because the radiant heat coming off it is tremendous. So these are great things to grow way outside your home if you have that amount of property, but definitely not in I would say you shouldn't put it in 0 to 15 feet of your house. And again, like me, I'm trying to make sure that my house doesn't burn down if I have to leave and go fight fire at your house. And so 30 feet away from me is my comfort level for taking a tree down. Okay, so here's a 5 to 30 foot zone. You have nice green grass there. Obviously it's dried out, so that's not great, but if embers flew in here, it's cut low. It's got hardscape here. This is actually bark dust. So that wouldn't be good to have there, but you certainly want, if you have bark dust here, it's better out here or way out here. You can redistribute it to get rid of it and just leave it as dirt. If you want to put something different there, they have decorative rock in all different colors, which is phenomenal, and it doesn't go away. So you can blow needles out of it without it moving if you get a big enough size. So I get 1 to 1.5 inch, looks like rectangles. It's called aspen. It's kind of a gold and brown colors. And my wife didn't like it at first because it wasn't the color of bark, but then she's like, actually, it looks really good. So I passed the test there, and I was like, well, we got 10 yards of this, so I'm not going to scoop it all back up and get rid of it, or send it back. Here we go. Ladder fuels. So this is how fires start from embers, little spot fires, and then they kind of roll along here with the wind. 5 mile an hour wind will carry this, 5 miles an hour, obviously. But with little wind gusts, it can really catch trees and stuff that's not pruned up, like the pruning on, or the limbing on this tree is good. These aren't starting on fire, but you got these little trees that are right near the ground, and then the fire grows up, you get in the crowns. So if you have trees with bushes like this, you either want to get rid of these bushes or you want to limb the tree up higher. Based on this, the fire that comes off this, if it catches on fire, 3 times the height. So make that kind of your marker. And I just tell people, look, it's a lot easier to save the tall tree and not have to pay for it to be cut down, and rather get rid of the small stuff around it. And around here we have sagebrush and weeds and grasses and things. And that's all stuff that you can make a little moat around those trees or a little island to prevent that tree from catching on fire. And certainly we have an abundance of that type of material, a lot of dry grasses and sage and bitterbrush. So on this next photo, this is typically what we have everywhere around us. And this burns incredibly hot and fast. I tell people it's good deer food in the wintertime or in the summertime when you see dead stuff in it, just yank it out and get rid of it. It's extra fuel. And make this in clumps or clusters or islands. So it has fire breaks in between it. So you don't have a massive amount of flame impingement coming toward your house if the wind was blowing toward your house. If it's blowing away from your house, it's probably blowing towards your neighbors. So you want to be good neighbors as well. This also has firewood. I will tell you that when we go out and do assessments in the summertime, we're like, absolutely, you got to get the firewood off your front porch. It's, you're not burning anymore. So get it 30 feet out away from your house. I will tell you that insurance companies, if they come to write you a policy in January, they see that firewood on your deck. They say, you have to get that firewood off your deck. And you say, but it's January, I'm using it. And they're like, yep, we know. But odds are that our insurance company thinks that you won't move that if you don't burn it all off. And so in the summertime, and we're not going to come back here because we're going to write you a policy for a year. We're not going to come up and check on everybody and do spot checks. But a year from now, you're probably going to have that firewood still there. And so that's a fire potential. And so we won't write you a policy unless you move it. And then you have to take pictures, send it in to their underwriters before they write you a policy. So again, when you're having an assessment at your home, I advise everybody to do that so they know exactly where they're at. Again, everybody is in, at least in Sisters, and what I look at, a lot of people need to do more. And we did 300 and something assessments last year, and I go drive through neighborhoods to do other assessments this year, and nothing's been done on those homes. And so this is kind of a call to action that, look, we're trying to prevent these fires from happening, and we're trying to prevent insurance companies from bailing on our state. And so we have to do what we can control. And that is doing whatever you can to mitigate the fire hazards at your home. Okay, here's your 30 to 100 foot. This person has done a great job. So if a firewall came through here, this cheatgrass would already probably be burned and or scorched from the ember showers. They've done the pruning here. They've got great tree spacing. They do have the horrible juniper trees, but this is 30 feet from your home. And this is one of the smaller trees. So this over here looks pretty robust. I mean, that's probably somebody else's property because there's a gate there. But this stuff is gonna burn, and it's gonna be flame lengths 3 times that height. And then it comes to here and it just drops down to the ground. And then there's nothing around this tree that will catch these branches on fire. So looking good there. Ember showers don't typically catch juniper bush trees on fire or limbs. You'd have to have a tremendous amount of embers blowing at one of these trees to get it on fire. But I'm sure everybody's burned one of these before and knows, when you light that thing on fire, all this stuff crackles and pops and burns off really quickly. And then the twigs or the sticks out here don't burn. So you're left with basically the limb with no greenery on it. If you're trying to do your fuels mitigation in the wintertime. Tree spacing. This is pretty simple. You can find all this information on NFPA. That's the National Fire Protection Agency. Project Wildfire has this information. Really, we're going to look at tree spacing and tell you what's appropriate. These are great. This is a great guide here. We'll also give you this guide when we do your inspection. We'll also hand you a report, or we'll send you a report in PDF that shows our recommendations. Again, we're giving recommendations. It's not code, but we're trying to get people to do something. And the more and more people that do this, especially in neighborhoods where your homes are a little bit closer together, that's potential to create a Firewise neighborhood, which also allows us to get special grant money to be able to help you with fuels mitigation year over year, like a dumpster program or a grant for $5,000 to clean up common spaces. That's the benefit of Firewise monetarily. The big benefit is that you're kind of getting everybody in the same mindset to be able to do fuels mitigation and learn from their neighbor, get the assessment from your local fire department. And so you're making your property safe, which in turn makes your neighbor's property safe. Some insurance companies offer discount, but I can tell you one thing, State Farm doesn't, because they are insuring this home in that neighborhood. My agent is insuring this home and not my neighbor's house. And so we can't control what happens on your neighbor's property, and your neighbor's property is no concern to them unless they're insuring it. So State Farm will not give discounts. But if you have State Farm, don't get rid of your insurance now. Don't shop around. Once you get a policy, please do not try to shop around, because that's a red flag for them to drop you, especially if we're in a high hazard area, high hazard zone. Again, they just look at the vegetation and topography, and they know that the eastern side of the state is dry, but they're also finding people getting dropped on the west side. So nobody's immune to it.
As the threat of wildfires increases for Americans all around the country, we're learning that what your house is made of and small.
I told everybody about that GMA thing. Here it is right here. I forgot I added this in. So we're going to play this so people don't have to search it out or Google it. And then we're going to wrap up with some home assessments. So we're nearing the end. So stick with me for a couple minutes. This is about 7 minutes long, but it's a great video. Was done, I believe, at the end of 2023.
Changes to your property can have a big impact on how vulnerable you are and your home. Matt Gutman is in South Carolina at the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, testing out the latest research on fire safety. Good morning again, Matt.
Hey, good morning again, Robin, here at IVHS. They study how wildfires work, and so that's why they have this bank of ember generators. Beyond that, they have a wall of fans. They want to learn how to better protect structures from wildfires, and you can see they have stuff cooking already in the mulch. This is how quickly it catches. Now, I'm from California. We have wildfires. It's a part of life there, but we are starting to see fires catch in places like Louisiana and New Jersey, places that were considered lush. And for the uninitiated, it might seem that there is nothing you can do when a wildfire is coming right at you to your community or your home. But we have learned here that there are a number of practical steps that you can take to help protect your home and your family.
We're at a one-of-a-kind test facility where researchers study the science of wildfires, something I've spent much of my career covering for ABC News in California.
Wow! The intensity of that is absolutely enormous. The heat is overwhelming. So there's nothing they can do with that wind. This is a firestorm. We're going to the other side of the car.
Here at the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS, that powerful wind is simulated by this towering wall of more than 100 industrial-strength fans, blasting those red-hot embers toward structures. This helps scientists learn what kinds of building materials will burn and what can withstand the hot fury of Mother Nature. Experts say it's those scorching embers, though tiny, that can turn small fires into town-destroying events. It was those wind-driven embers in Maui in August that experts say helped the historic and deadly inferno to spread so fast, killing at least 97 people and engulfing more than 2,000 structures, most of them homes. But not this one, featured in the Honolulu Civil Beat, virtually unscathed. Some called it a miracle. But researchers at IBHS point to two factors that likely saved the structure: a commercial-grade steel roof and river stones surrounding the home. The homeowners telling the Civil Beat they replaced their traditional landscaping with the stones not to protect their home from fire, but from water and termite damage. Little do they know that one of the key tactics IBHS teaches is creating a minimum of a 5-foot fire-resistant buffer zone around your home, using hardscapes and non-combustible fencing.
Like your moat. You are keeping wildfire and embers away from your structure.
This time-lapse video shows a fire ignited along a fence between two structures. Watch as the fire never reaches the home on the right because it can't pass through that metal fence. The wooden fence on the left, however, acts like a wick of a candle, bringing the fire directly to the house. And now they've built a home just for us. So you can see there are two distinct sides here. One has this wooden mulch outside. You see a wooden deck, wooden siding. The other side is a wildfire prepared home. And these are fire resistant sidings. You can see the metal in the deck, that fence, the part that actually touches the house, that is also made out of metal. And you can see this hardscaping all around. So under the supervision of the Richburg Fire Department, we fired up those ember generators, and they allow me to step right in their path. And in just minutes,
These embers are coming in fast, and just now, this is the start of a fire right underneath this bush here, right next to the deck. This could be the thing that ignites this whole house here. This deck, the one made out of steel, nothing. And this deck right now is catching fire. That thing is going to blow up. This deck is now completely engulfed in flames. It's going to take this house.
and less than 2 minutes later, it did exactly that. All the while, the right side remained seemingly untouched.
This house is virtually gone. You can feel the heat from those flames right now. It is absolutely massive. And you can see how quickly that wooden side of this house was engulfed in flames. It's in the eaves right now, which also means it's going through those vents.
Those vents were covered in steel protective mesh, but they were the wrong size. The holes so big, they let the embers through. The rule of thumb here is that you don't want mesh that can have a nail or a golf tee go through it. You want it to be a bit finer than that, something that can block this stuff. That way, the embers can't get through that mesh and into your home.
Right now, the firefighters are about to come in and douse this thing because it's gotten too hot. So this is what's left of the house. You can see that this is the side that was built with that fire-resistant material. It is almost completely unscathed. Check that out, guys. Even the ornaments did not burn. And of course, this is the side built that wooden material, wooden siding. It is almost completely charred. The vinyl gutter is completely destroyed. Now, the first line of defense for houses is often the roofs. But the good news is the vast majority of homes in America have Class A rated roofs. So the experts say we've got to focus on that 5-foot defensible perimeter around your house. That's where you don't want any of this kind of mulch like that can burn. You don't want shrubbery. You want hardscaping if possible to create that barrier to protect. Now we're going to light a switch in a second. I'm going to explain why. You know, I live in California. We love our juniper bushes there, but they are dangerous. You don't want these kinds of bushes right next to your house. So what we've done here is simulate a juniper bush getting hit by a spark from one of those Ember generators. And there is a reason that they call juniper bushes little green gas cans, because they burn so fast, so hot. And if you have something like this right up against your house, it could be cataclysmic. That's why you want that defensible board, guys.
Oh, you know, we've said wow about 5 times just watching that. So much informative information there, Matt. But Matt, if a fire is expected to head your way, what are some steps that people should be taking?
The first is you want to have a plan, and that starts with getting that 5-foot defensible barrier around your house. You want to clear toys like this cornhole, even wooden tools like these, garden tools, leaves. You want to make space for that. You also need to create a plan, know the exit routes out of your community, get a go bag ready to go. And most importantly, do not stick around to try to protect your house. It's not worth it. Your life is the most important thing, guys.
Yeah, that is the truth. And Matt, thank you so much for always bringing us so much information and putting yourself literally in the middle of it.
Okay. Great video. Forgot I added that in after our last meeting, because I send that to each homeowner after I do an assessment, along with some links to Shutes County alerts. If you have any kind of alert system like on the coast that goes to your cell phone, that would give you early warning for wildland fire, or over there tsunamis as well. So that sending that video to everybody kind of puts in a video kind of visual of what we're trying to accomplish after we walk around the home and give them all the notes. So say we're doing a home assessment on this. We start off looking at the roof. This doesn't have gutters, so we're good there. This has like an alcove in here. One of the big red flags is all these bushes right up against the home. These are the highly flammable ones that we don't want. This fence, it's kind of in disarray. It's not very well maintained, or it's old. This tree's too close as far as all the newest standards. I will mention that I was watching that video that they just before the juniper, the demonstration of the juniper gas can, is that they had some plants planted within the 0 to 5 foot defensible space. That's not typical. I know those were succulents, but again, they say any plant is eventually can burn up. And so again, you gotta walk that line between what I'm telling you as far as making sure we lessen the probabilities of your home catching on fire, and also what your insurance agent would want you to do. So again, talk to your insurance agent, find out what their parameters are, tell them you're having a wildfire home assessment, and you want to make sure that you're doing the best for your house and also for your insurance policy. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking to their insurance agent. I will tell you that they make money off your policies, so they don't want you to lose insurance. And there's a lot of them in Eastern Oregon that are hurting because their parent companies are pulling out. 4 more slides. Here's another home assessment. This looks like kind of Northwest Bend. If we were doing an interactive presentation, I use some of these assessments, these photos to train our assessors. And we talk about, okay, what do you see here? And right off the way, this is probably a common area, walking pathway that's probably not owned by the homeowner. So this is a common area that you'd want the homeowners association to address. You've got a lot of trees here that's too close to spacing, even though they're ponderosa pines. They're certainly pretty close to the home. This one's pretty close to the home. We look at all these things and give you some recommendations on what to do. Again, trees are expensive to take down nowadays. And so we sympathize with people. If you're gonna have a ponderosa pine 10 feet from your home, the branches have to be 10 feet off the side of the house and 10 feet above your roof line. If my State Farm insurance agent said you cannot have any branches above your house or 5 feet from touching it. So different parameters, kind of the same goal, but again, I want to do what's best for my home. I know that State Farm cannot drop me because I've had them for like 35 years. So they cannot drop my policy, but they certainly can raise my rates. This one, pretty obvious. We don't want these trees near the deck for one. And they've got some defensible space around here. I imagine this is gravel, but they've got a bunch of combustible items against the house. Again, on your 360, that's going to be something that you need to mitigate and get away from your house, store them somewhere else. Yeah, those trees in the front there are not good. This juniper probably needs to be limbed up. I can't see much further underneath it. But that is our last assessment. Wait, I might have one more. Nope, that's our last assessment. Basically, we talked a little bit about the history. Conditions are now worse. What we need to do, because we're living in the WUI. There's multiple ways that your home can ignite, and keep your embers out of your structure, and make sure that you're doing whatever your assessor or your wildland fire assessment notes say is probably a good thing. Again, talk to your insurance company or your agent if you feel comfortable, and use defensible space and know where and how to reduce fuels. Pretty important message. Again, I didn't allow for questions because I obviously went over my hour by a half hour. But I'm glad this is going to be recorded so people can look at it again. Also look for my information in the notes. Jessica might have done that. I can't see them, but you can contact me here at the fire station or email me if you have any questions. If you don't know who your person is that you need to talk to, I can help you out with that as well. But always happy to help. I hope you guys learned something, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate it. It was awesome information. And yes, I will be sending out to all homeowners of Aperion the link to this recording, as well as Stephen's information if you guys have any questions for him afterwards.